It's hard to put into words what it feels like to be stuck in a cycle where your expenses grow faster than your income, but I'll try, because maybe someone out there knows exactly what I'm talking about. I'm 25, working a full-time job that I thought would be my stepping stone to something better. When I graduated college, I was hopeful, excited even, about building a life for myself. But now, 4 years in, that excitement feels distant, buried under the weight of constant financial pressure that never seems to ease. Every day, I'm reminded that no matter how hard I work, the system seems rigged to keep me barely afloat. Rent takes up nearly half of my paycheck. I live in a small one-bedroom apartment, not by choice but because anything more affordable means living even further away from work, and then the cost and time of commuting eat into what little free time and money I have left. Utilities have crept up steadily, as have groceries. The prices at the grocery store seem to change every week, and never for the better. I watch the total climb, sometimes more than I expected, and I have to put items back on the shelf because the numbers just don't add up. The gas pump is another nightmare. Some days, I drive reluctantly, calculating the miles and hoping the tank will last until payday. Other days, I choose public transit, knowing it'll take longer and sometimes leave me exhausted and late for work. Every decision feels like a trade-off, comfort versus cost, convenience versus necessity. Even going out with friends feels like an impossible luxury. Invitations to dinners or movies come with a sense of guilt, knowing I have to say no, again and again, just to keep my budget balanced. The emotional toll isn't easy to explain. There's a constant, dull anxiety that never goes away. I lie awake at night worrying about what happens if my car breaks down, or if I get sick and can't afford the medical bills. Sometimes, I feel isolated, like I'm carrying this burden alone because nobody around me understands the pressure or the daily sacrifices it requires. I've become guarded with friends and family, hesitant to share the depth of the struggle because it feels shameful. It's as if admitting to this struggle is admitting failure. What stings the most is how many dreams I've had to push aside. I wanted to go back to school for a master's degree, believing that would be the key to better opportunities and stability. That idea now feels like a distant dream, almost irresponsible in my current situation. I dreamed of traveling, exploring new places and cultures, expanding my world beyond this cycle of work and bills. Even buying a home someday, a thought that once filled me with hope, now feels like a fantasy I can't afford to entertain. To survive, I've developed a sharp eye for budgeting. I track every penny, use coupons religiously, meal prep to avoid eating out, and pick up side gigs whenever I can. These little victories, like managing to save even a small amount or paying off a credit card balance, are bittersweet because they come alongside constant pressure. I often feel exhausted, worn down by the unending grind. Despite it all, I try to hold on to hope. I remind myself that this isn't permanent, that someday the system might shift, or my circumstances might change. But some days, that hope feels fragile and distant, buried under the reality of what it means to live paycheck to paycheck in a world that feels increasingly expensive and unforgiving. This story isn't just mine. I know so many young adults facing the same impossible math, the same suffocating pressure, and the same postponed dreams. Writing this down is scary, but maybe it helps, to feel seen, to feel understood. Because sometimes, the only way to keep going is to remind yourself you're not alone in this. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. I wake up every morning with this familiar knot in my stomach. It's not just the anxiety about the day ahead, but a deep, persistent feeling of being trapped, caught in a system where no matter how hard I work, expenses grow faster than my income, and freedom feels like a distant dream. I'm 24 now, juggling 2 part-time jobs, and trying desperately to make ends meet in an economy that seems designed to leave people like me behind. When I first moved out on my own, I had big hopes. I pictured a life where I could afford a decent apartment, maybe even save for a vacation or put a little away for the future. But reality hit hard and fast. Rent has been the biggest shock. Each year it creeps up, sometimes before I even get used to the last increase. My tiny apartment, which barely fits all my belongings, consumes more than half my paycheck. The idea of moving somewhere cheaper sounds like a solution, but it means longer hours on crowded public transit or unsafe neighborhoods that I'd rather avoid. So I stay, scraping by, feeling more and more like I'm just treading water. Food has become another source of stress. I plan meals around what's cheapest and longest lasting: bags of rice, frozen vegetables, canned beans. Fresh fruit and veggies are a luxury I can't regularly afford. Sometimes I skip meals to save money, especially when bills pile up or unexpected expenses come knocking. It's hard to describe how quietly damaging hunger is, not the loud, desperate kind, but the subtle gnawing that drains you physically and emotionally. Social life? That's almost non-existent. Invitations to dinners, concerts, or weekend trips come and go, but I have to decline more than I want to. It's embarrassing to say I can't afford it so often, and the isolation builds. I watch my friends live a little more freely, and I'm happy for them, but there's a loneliness in sitting on the sidelines, wondering when my time will come. The divide between their lives and mine feels wider every day. My jobs are a lifeline, but also a source of exhaustion and frustration. Raises are infrequent and barely keep pace with inflation. I've thought about going back to school or finding a career that pays better, but the time, energy, and money needed feel overwhelming. After working long hours, I come home drained, too tired to dream or plan. Sometimes, the future feels like a distant fog I can't reach. Anxiety is a constant companion. I lie awake at night imagining what would happen if my car broke down or I got sick. Without savings, any unexpected expense could push me into crisis. The fear is exhausting, and it steals the small moments of peace I manage to find during the day. I've had to postpone so many dreams. Buying a home, traveling, even the idea of starting a family seems far off. Instead, I focus on survival, paying bills, avoiding debt, and trying to stash away whatever little I can for emergencies. Dreaming big feels reckless when the present is so uncertain. To cope, I cling to small things: long walks in quiet parks, music that soothes, books borrowed from the library. I've become meticulous about budgeting and cutting out all but the essentials. I talk to a few close friends about my struggles, and that honesty helps ease the loneliness. Despite everything, I hold on to hope. It's fragile and often buried beneath stress, but it's there. Maybe a new opportunity will come, or the economy will shift, or life will hand me a break. I imagine waking up one day without the constant pressure, able to breathe and dream again. Until then, I take it one day at a time, reminding myself that surviving this is its own kind of strength. This is my story, a young adult caught in an economy where expenses outpace income, where every choice is shadowed by financial pressure, and where dreams wait patiently for a better day. But it's also a story of resilience, vulnerability, and the quiet hope that things will change. Maybe, by sharing it, I'm not alone, and maybe someone reading this feels a little less alone too. I never imagined that just living, just existing as a young adult, would feel like walking a tightrope stretched over a canyon that keeps getting wider. Every morning, I wake up with this weight pressing down on my chest, the kind of pressure that isn't quite panic, but it's close enough to make my hands tremble when I think about the day ahead. I try to breathe through it, tell myself I'm strong, that I'll get through. But the truth is, the tightrope feels thinner than ever, and the canyon below feels endless. It started with small things: rent going up by just a little, the coffee I used to buy on my way to work suddenly feeling like a luxury. But then, rent increased again. And again. Utilities rose. Groceries became more expensive. My paycheck, meanwhile, stayed stubbornly the same. Or worse, with a few cuts and stalled raises, it felt like it shrunk. Some days, I sit down with my bills and stare at them like a puzzle with missing pieces. I try to rearrange, shuffle expenses around, cut this, save that. But the numbers never add up. There's always a gap, sometimes small, sometimes huge, and that gap is the space where anxiety lives. The uncertainty is the worst part. Not knowing if I'll have enough to cover next month's rent, if I'll have to choose between groceries and the internet, between medication and filling up the car. Choices no one should have to make, but I do, over and over. I remember when I got my first job, right after college. I was so proud. Finally, independence. I could pay my own way, maybe even put a little aside for a rainy day. I imagined a future where I'd save for a down payment on a home, maybe travel once or twice a year, maybe even start thinking about a family. Those dreams felt so close then, almost tangible. But that was before the economic storm hit, before prices soared and wages stalled. Now, those dreams feel like they belong to someone else. Maybe someone lucky. Not me. Some nights, I lie awake listening to the hum of the city outside my window, wondering how I ended up here, caught in a system that seems designed to keep me running but never moving forward. A system where expenses balloon like a relentless tide, and my income is just a leaky bucket trying to hold water. Every month is a race against time, a constant balancing act that leaves me exhausted. Emotionally, it's draining. I've learned to put on a brave face, to smile when friends ask how I'm doing. But inside, I'm often overwhelmed by shame and frustration. Shame because I feel like I should be able to handle this better, frustration because the rules of the game keep changing against me. It's a lonely place, this intersection of financial stress and isolation. When money's tight, socializing becomes a luxury, and slowly, the world starts to feel smaller, quieter. I cope the best way I can. I cook at home instead of eating out, buy clothes only when absolutely necessary, cancel subscriptions that once brought me joy. I search for second jobs, freelance gigs, anything to stretch the paycheck. I've gotten creative with transportation, walking, biking, sometimes even couch surfing with friends to save on rent. Every little sacrifice chips away at my dignity, but it's survival. There are moments when the pressure gets too much. Tears come unbidden when I'm alone, frustrated with the endless cycle, scared about the future. I sometimes feel trapped in a maze without an exit, watching the walls close in just a little more each day. And yet, even with all this, I hold on to hope. Hope that maybe one day, this won't be my reality. That maybe the economy will shift, that wages will catch up, or that I'll find a new path out of this. I dream of a day when I can stop counting every cent, when I can breathe without that invisible weight. I dream of owning a small place where I feel safe, where I can invite friends without worrying about the cost of snacks or drinks. I dream of traveling, not because I have to escape, but because I want to explore and grow. And sometimes, just sometimes, I dream about slowing down, finding time to focus on myself, to heal from the exhaustion of constant worry. For now, though, those dreams are on hold. They're locked away behind bills, rent increases, and grocery prices. But they exist, quietly, stubbornly. They remind me that I'm more than my financial struggles, more than the system trying to hold me down. They remind me that despite the trap, despite the pressure, I'm still here, still fighting. And maybe that's enough for today. I wake up every morning with the same knot in my stomach, the kind that tightens just knowing I have to face another day where money feels like this invisible weight I'm dragging behind me. It's not like I'm asking for much, just enough to cover the rent, groceries, a little gas to get to work, and maybe a coffee once in a while. But somehow, the numbers never add up. Bills stack higher, prices rise, and my paycheck feels smaller than it did just a few months ago. It's exhausting, not just physically but mentally and emotionally too. I remember when I graduated college, full of hope and dreams. I thought I'd land a job that would let me live comfortably, maybe even start saving for a little apartment of my own or a trip somewhere just to breathe and see the world outside my current bubble. But reality hit fast. The job I got pays the bills, barely. My paycheck covers rent, if I'm lucky, and whatever's left is swallowed by utilities, phone bills, and groceries. And that's before I even think about gas, car maintenance, or health expenses. It feels like the system is designed to keep me running just enough to survive but never enough to thrive. Every decision feels like a negotiation with myself. Do I buy groceries or pay a utility bill this week? Can I afford to fill up my gas tank or should I rely on public transportation, which adds hours to my commute and makes me late sometimes? Even a simple pleasure like grabbing a coffee with a friend feels like a luxury I can't justify. The rising cost of everything means I have to cut back constantly, and it's draining. I'm tired of saying no, to myself, to friends, to the little joys that make life bearable. Sometimes I wonder if I'm the only one feeling this way, but then I hear snippets of conversation around me, see the same stressed faces on the subway, or watch posts online from friends juggling the same impossible balancing act. It's a collective struggle, but it still feels incredibly lonely. How do you explain to people outside this cycle that your paycheck disappearing the moment you get it isn't because you're irresponsible? It's because the world is moving too fast, and the costs keep rising, while wages stay stagnant. That gap grows every month, and it feels like I'm sinking deeper into quicksand. Some nights, the anxiety creeps in so strong I can't sleep. I lie awake, thinking about what will happen if I miss a payment or if my car breaks down unexpectedly. I don't have a safety net, no family cushion, no spare cash. Just a fragile hope that next month will be better. But what if it isn't? What if this is my life for the foreseeable future? It's hard to keep hoping when the weight of reality is pressing down so heavily. I cope by trying to keep busy, distracting myself with work and small routines. Cooking simple meals, going for walks, watching a show or two. Sometimes I let myself dream, quietly, in the back of my mind. I dream of a day when I can afford a small place that's mine, where I'm not sharing walls thin enough to hear my neighbors' arguments. A place where I can have a little garden or a spot to read without worrying about the noise or the next bill. I dream of traveling again, of seeing new places, meeting new people, and feeling free. But those dreams feel fragile, like glass shards I can't quite pick up and hold on to without them breaking. I've had to postpone so many things, saving for further education, investing in my passions, even thinking about starting a family someday. Each postponement feels like a small defeat, a reminder that the life I imagined isn't quite within reach. And yet, I keep going. Because despite everything, I still want to believe there's a way out of this cycle. I want to believe that if I keep working, keep trying, I'll find a path that leads to a better place. But some days, when the pressure builds and the bills pile up, I feel trapped. Like the system is this endless treadmill that keeps speeding up, and no matter how fast I run, I'm stuck in place or even slipping backward. It's a hard truth to face, but it's mine. And I'm trying to hold on to hope, fragile and small as it is, that someday, I'll break free. Until then, I keep going, one day at a time. I never thought I'd find myself stuck like this, caught in a never-ending loop where no matter how hard I try, the numbers just don't add up. I'm 24, working 2 jobs, constantly exhausted, and still the bills keep piling up faster than I can pay them. It's like I'm running on a treadmill that only speeds up but never takes me anywhere. Every day starts with a quick check of my bank account, a ritual that fills me with a mix of hope and dread. The balance usually looks lower than I expected, and I already know I'll have to make tough choices, skip the extra groceries, delay paying one bill, or borrow a little from my credit card again. My paycheck is steady, but it hasn't really grown in years, and the cost of living around me is like a rising tide I can't hold back. Rent is the biggest slice of the pie. I share a tiny apartment with 2 roommates just to afford it. If I lived alone, I'd be crushed under the weight of rent alone. Utilities keep climbing too. Last month, the heating bill nearly doubled, and I had to keep the thermostat low just to keep from falling behind. Groceries are a constant battle, prices seem to jump every time I go to the store, and fresh food is a luxury I can't always afford. I've become an expert at meal planning and coupon hunting just to keep things manageable. Transportation is another headache. Gas prices fluctuate wildly, so some days I drive cautiously, hoping the tank lasts, and other days I take the bus, even if it means long waits and missed shifts. That added stress bleeds into everything: work, sleep, even relationships. I sometimes feel like I'm apologizing to my friends when I can't join them for dinner or a night out. It's not that I don't want to, they're the people who keep me sane, but I simply can't justify the expense. The emotional toll is exhausting. There's a persistent ache of worry that never leaves. Will my car break down? What if I get sick and can't pay the medical bills? The uncertainty makes me feel small and vulnerable. I've gotten better at hiding it, but some nights I lie awake, heart pounding, unable to quiet the anxious thoughts swirling through my mind. It's lonely, this kind of stress, like carrying a secret burden that no one else can see. I'm trapped in a system that feels designed to keep people like me struggling. Inflation pushes costs higher, but wages barely budge. It's a cruel game where I'm constantly trying to catch up, but the finish line keeps moving farther away. I work hard, sometimes 2 jobs, sometimes extra shifts, but it never feels like enough. The gap between what I earn and what I owe grows a little wider each month. Dreams have had to wait. I wanted to finish college, to get a degree that would help me break free from this cycle. I hoped to travel, to see the world beyond the narrow lens of my daily struggles. I even dreamed of owning a home someday, a place I could call my own. But all of those things feel like distant fantasies now. They're ideas I tuck away, telling myself it's not the right time, maybe someday, but that someday keeps slipping further into the future. To cope, I hold on to the small victories, making a budget and sticking to it, saving a few dollars here and there, paying off a credit card balance. I remind myself that these are steps forward, even if progress feels slow. I lean on the few people who understand, who don't judge me for saying no to plans or needing a little help. Their support is a lifeline. Writing this down feels like peeling back a layer of myself I usually keep hidden. But maybe it helps. Maybe someone out there feels the same pressure, the same fear, and the same quiet hope. I want to believe that one day, things will change, that I'll breathe easier, live freer, and finally chase the dreams I've had to postpone for so long. Until then, I keep going. One tight budget, one small step, one hopeful breath at a time. It feels like I'm running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up, no matter how fast I push my legs. I'm 27, working hard, but the finish line just keeps moving farther away. Every month, my expenses climb faster than my paycheck. The rent goes up, groceries get pricier, utilities spike, and my income? It barely inches forward. The gap grows wider, and I'm stuck, exhausted, trying to figure out how to survive in a system that seems designed to keep me trapped. I remember the day I moved into my first apartment alone. I was proud, finally independent, ready to build a life. I budgeted carefully, excited to decorate my space, cook meals, and maybe, just maybe, save a little for the future. But the reality hit me hard. The rent swallowed most of my paycheck before I could even think about anything else. Utilities, internet, transportation, each bill was like a surprise punch. And food? Eating well became a luxury I couldn't afford. I've learned to live on bulk rice, canned beans, frozen vegetables, and whatever's on sale. Fresh fruit is a rare treat, usually a maybe next week kind of thing. Sometimes, I skip meals so I can pay rent or cover a medical copay. Hunger doesn't scream, it whispers quietly, but it's there, gnawing at my energy and mood. Some days, I feel so drained I can't even summon the motivation to cook. So I settle for whatever's cheapest, even if it's not nourishing. Social life feels like a distant memory. Invitations come, but I decline more than I want to. "Sorry, I can't afford it" is a phrase I repeat like a mantra. It stings to feel left out, to watch friends go on trips or enjoy nights out while I stay home, worrying about bills. Sometimes I wonder if they understand how lonely it is to say no so often, to hide my struggles behind a smile. Work is a double-edged sword. I hold down 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. Both pay just enough to cover rent and basic expenses, with a little scraped together for emergencies, though those are rare and tight. Raises are small or non-existent. Promotions feel like an impossible climb when you're already exhausted from just surviving. I dream about going back to school or starting a career that pays well, but between work and the bills, I barely have time to breathe, let alone plan. Anxiety has become my constant companion. At night, I lie awake thinking about what would happen if my car broke down or if I got sick. Without a safety net, a single unexpected expense could plunge me into crisis. That fear gnaws at me, making it hard to rest or find peace. It's exhausting, this constant worry about what tomorrow might bring. I've had to shelve dreams, big and small. Buying a home, traveling the world, even starting a family feel like distant fantasies. Instead, I focus on surviving, paying rent, avoiding debt, and trying to stash away a few dollars when I can. Dreaming feels like a luxury, and sometimes even that feels out of reach. To cope, I find comfort in small things, a quiet walk in the park, music that lifts my spirits, books from the library. I budget obsessively, cutting every non-essential expense. I've started opening up to a few trusted friends about what I'm going through, and the honesty helps lessen the loneliness. Despite the hardship, I hold on to hope. It's fragile and often buried beneath layers of fatigue and stress, but it's there. Maybe a better job will come, or the economy will improve, or a lucky break will appear. I imagine waking up one day without the crushing weight of financial worry, breathing freely and dreaming boldly again. Until then, I take it one day at a time, reminding myself that surviving this is a quiet, steady kind of strength. This is my story, a young adult trapped in a system where expenses outpace income, where every decision is shadowed by financial strain, and where dreams wait patiently for a better future. But it's also a story of resilience, vulnerability, and hope. Maybe by sharing it, I'm not alone. And maybe someone reading this feels a little less alone too. I never imagined that managing money could feel like walking a tightrope over a pit that keeps getting deeper. But here I am, 26 years old, caught in this endless balancing act where every step forward feels heavier, every breath a little more strained. The economic pressure isn't just a line on my bank statement, it's a constant, gnawing companion shadowing every decision I make, shaping my days, my emotions, my future. I remember when I first started working full-time, fresh out of college, full of hope and energy. The job wasn't glamorous, retail management, but it paid the bills, just barely. At that time, rent was manageable, groceries were affordable, and I could even squeeze in a night out every now and then. There was a freedom in that, a sense that if I worked hard and budgeted wisely, I could carve out a life of my own. But the years rolled on, and with them came the creeping, relentless rise of expenses. Rent went up faster than my salary, sometimes twice in a single year. Utilities, gas, groceries, they all climbed steadily, like a tide slowly swallowing the shore. Meanwhile, my income remained nearly stagnant. Raises were minimal, sometimes non-existent, or swallowed by taxes and deductions I barely understood. Now, every month is a juggling act. I sit at my kitchen table, bills spread out like a battlefield map. Electricity, water, phone, internet, student loans, credit card minimums, and rent, the basics that eat up nearly all my paycheck before I even think about food or gas. I track every expense on an app, trying to squeeze pennies here and there, hoping to find some breathing room. But it feels like a losing game. There are days I skip meals or eat less just to make sure I don't overdraft my account. I've grown used to meals made of rice and beans or instant noodles, not because I enjoy them, but because they're cheap and filling. I avoid social invitations because even the price of a coffee or a bus ticket feels like an unnecessary luxury. When my friends talk about weekend trips, dinners out, or new gadgets, I smile and nod, but inside, I'm silently retreating. The gap between their freedom and my constraints is widening every day. The pressure seeps into every corner of my mind. There's a dull, persistent anxiety that wakes me up some nights. What if the car breaks down? What if there's a medical emergency? What if I lose this job and have to start all over? I keep thinking about all the what-ifs because the truth is, I'm barely hanging on. It's exhausting, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. The weight of financial insecurity is like carrying a heavy stone in my chest that I can't set down. I sometimes wonder if I'm doing something wrong. Am I not trying hard enough? Should I be working more hours, picking up a second job? But the more I push myself, the more I realize it's not just about effort, it's about a system stacked against people like me. The cost of living keeps outpacing wages. The jobs that pay enough often require skills or education I can't afford to get right now. It's like running on a treadmill that speeds up just as I gain momentum. Coping isn't easy. I find solace in small routines, morning walks, listening to music, writing in my journal. Sometimes I let myself dream, but I tuck those thoughts away quickly, because hope can feel dangerous when reality is so harsh. I had dreams once, traveling, owning a home, building a career in something creative and meaningful. I wanted to start a family someday, to feel secure enough to plan for more than just tomorrow. Those dreams haven't disappeared, but they're buried beneath the weight of immediate needs. I've had to postpone things I once thought were certain, going back to school, saving for a deposit, even starting a retirement fund. Each delayed plan feels like a quiet defeat, a reminder that the life I imagined isn't just around the corner anymore. Sometimes, late at night, I imagine what it would be like to break free from this trap. To wake up without that knot of worry in my stomach, to make choices based on what makes me happy instead of what I can afford. To feel proud of what I've built rather than ashamed of what I can't provide. But the truth is, those moments of clarity are rare. Most days, I'm just trying to keep the pieces from falling apart. I want people to understand that financial pressure isn't just about numbers, it's about feeling trapped in a system that keeps moving the goalposts. It's about losing a sense of control and watching your hopes shrink as your options narrow. It's about the loneliness of hiding your struggles, because admitting you're barely surviving feels like admitting defeat. But even in the hardest moments, I hold on to a flicker of something fragile, resilience. I keep going because I have to, because maybe one day, the tide will turn. Maybe there will be a moment when the expenses slow down, when my income grows, when I can finally breathe. Until then, I'll keep walking this tightrope, one cautious step at a time, hoping to find balance in the chaos. That's my truth, messy, exhausting, and real. The pressure hasn't broken me yet. But it's a fight I wish no one else had to fight alone. I never imagined I'd be this tired before I even hit 30. It's not just physical exhaustion, though my body does ache most days. It's this heavy, grinding kind of fatigue that settles deep in your chest, the kind that comes from carrying a weight you can't see but always feel. That weight is money, or more accurately, the lack of it. Living paycheck to paycheck, trying to keep up in a world where everything costs more than it did last month, and my income barely budges. I'm trapped in a system that seems designed to squeeze every ounce of hope out of me, one bill at a time. I'm 27, working 2 jobs, and still it's never quite enough. I remember when I first started out, fresh out of college, full of hope and plans. I imagined paying off my student loans quickly, maybe renting a small apartment on my own, saving a little for emergencies, and eventually traveling somewhere far away just to breathe. But none of that feels possible anymore. Rent has doubled since I first moved to this city. The tiny 1-bedroom apartment I call home costs me more than half my monthly income. Utilities keep rising too, electricity, water, internet, all essential but constantly creeping up. Then there's groceries. It used to be I could grab basics without stressing too much, but now I find myself scouring discount aisles, clipping coupons, and meal planning obsessively just to make sure there's enough food to last the week. It's exhausting. And somehow, medical bills and car repairs sneak in, like unwelcome guests who never leave. I remember last winter when my heater broke. I had to choose between fixing it quickly or buying groceries. The cold was brutal. I layered on every sweater I owned and tried to ignore the numbness in my fingers. I felt powerless, like I was failing at the most basic thing, keeping myself safe and warm. And that feeling, that crushing sense of failure, stayed with me long after the heater was fixed. Every day is a balancing act. I check my bank account more times than I care to admit, hoping for some miracle deposit, a surprise windfall that never comes. I track every expense in a spreadsheet I update religiously, trying to find anywhere I can cut back, but the margins are razor thin. I've cut out almost all luxuries. No eating out, no new clothes, no nights out with friends, even small things like a cup of coffee from the cafe feel like an extravagant treat I can't justify. My friends don't always understand. When they talk about their weekend trips or new gadgets, I smile and nod, but inside I feel a mix of envy and shame. Envy because they seem to have this freedom, this safety net that I don't. Shame because I can't keep up, because I'm still stuck here, barely making ends meet. Sometimes I withdraw, avoiding calls or messages, embarrassed that I can't join in or contribute. The emotional toll is heavy. Anxiety creeps in almost constantly. I lie awake at night wondering what will happen if I lose my job, or if an emergency comes up. I'm scared of the future, not just mine, but the world's. Inflation, recession talks, job insecurity, it's a constant backdrop of worry that makes it hard to breathe or think straight. And yet, I try to hold on to hope. Hope that one day things will get better, that maybe I'll find a better job, or that the economy will stabilize. I cope in small ways. Sometimes I write in my journal, spilling out my frustrations and fears onto the page. It helps, even if just a little, to put words to the chaos inside. I've started running too, not because I'm in shape or competitive, but because it clears my mind, even if only briefly. I've found solace in small routines, like brewing tea in the evening or tending to a tiny plant on my windowsill. These small acts remind me I'm still here, still fighting. But dreams, those have been put on hold. I had plans, big ones. I wanted to travel, to see the world outside the city's limits. I wanted to save for a home of my own, maybe even start a family someday. I dreamed of having financial stability, of being able to breathe without constantly worrying about money. Now, those dreams feel distant, almost impossible. I tell myself it's temporary, that this is just a rough patch, but sometimes it's hard to believe. What keeps me going is the hope that this pressure isn't permanent, that one day I'll look back and see this time as a struggle I overcame, not a life sentence. I hold on to moments of kindness from strangers, laughter shared with friends, and the stubborn resilience that tells me to keep going even when the odds feel stacked against me. This isn't just about money, it's about dignity, security, and the simple right to live without constant fear. I know I'm not alone in this. So many young people feel the same squeeze, the same invisible weight. And maybe if we keep sharing these stories, keep speaking honestly about the struggle, something will change. Until then, I'll keep waking up, putting one foot in front of the other, and trying to find light in the cracks. Because even trapped, even stretched thin, I'm still here. Still hoping. Still fighting. Hey, friends! If you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. I never imagined that being 26 would feel like wading through quicksand, slow, exhausting, and impossible to escape. Every day feels like a battle, a delicate balancing act where one wrong move could send me spiraling deeper into financial chaos. I'm trapped in this system where the cost of living relentlessly rises, while my income barely budges, and that gap keeps stretching, swallowing any hope I once had for stability or peace of mind. I remember graduating college with a head full of dreams, ready to take on the world. But 4 years later, those dreams have faded into shadows, obscured by bills, rent, and the constant stress that clings to me like a second skin. I work full-time in a job that pays just enough to cover the basics, but not comfortably, not enough to save or breathe easy. The rising prices make it clear that my paycheck isn't stretching as far as it used to. Groceries, utilities, transportation, even healthcare, they all cost more every month, and I'm left figuring out what to cut next. Rent is the heaviest weight. I live in a tiny apartment I share with a roommate to make it somewhat affordable. Even then, nearly half my monthly income disappears just to keep a roof over my head. The electricity and heating bills spike with the seasons, forcing me to make tough choices. Do I turn down the heat in the winter and shiver through the night, or run it higher and worry about the next bill? I often choose the cold. Food is another constant source of worry. I've become an expert at budgeting meals, scouring the grocery store for sales, clipping coupons, and cooking at home every single night. Eating out? Forget it. That's a luxury I can't afford. Sometimes I skip meals when the money gets tight, and I try not to let the hunger gnaw at my thoughts too much. Getting to work is a challenge in itself. Gas prices fluctuate wildly, and my car's maintenance is a looming expense that I dread. On tough weeks, I take the bus, which is unreliable and adds hours to my day. I can feel my patience wearing thin and my energy depleting. These daily compromises chip away at my self-esteem. It's hard not to feel like I'm barely scraping by, and sometimes I wonder if I'm failing at adulting altogether. The emotional toll is something I struggle to put into words. There's a persistent anxiety that never quite fades, a knot in my stomach that tightens whenever I think about my finances. I lie awake most nights, worrying about what would happen if an unexpected expense hits, a car repair, a medical emergency, or even a flat tire. The idea of falling behind on rent or utilities terrifies me. It's a fear that lingers in the background of everything I do, making it hard to relax or imagine a future without this pressure. I've become secretive about my financial situation, ashamed to share the depth of my struggles. When friends talk about vacations, new apartments, or buying cars, I smile and nod, but inside I feel like an outsider. I'm afraid they'll see me as someone who can't keep up, someone who's broken. The isolation adds to the weight I carry every day. And yet, I cling to hope, fragile but persistent. I remind myself that this season isn't forever. I look for small wins, a shift at work that earns me a little extra cash, a coupon that saves me a few dollars, or finally paying off a lingering credit card balance. Those moments feel like proof that I'm still moving forward, even if it's just inches at a time. Some dreams have been put on hold. I wanted to go back to school, to earn a degree that could open doors and help me break free from this cycle. I dreamed of traveling, exploring new places, and experiencing life beyond the confines of stress and budget constraints. The idea of buying a home someday feels almost impossible now, a distant star that flickers but never gets closer. Still, I keep going. I'm learning to find strength in vulnerability, sharing my story, even if it's uncomfortable, helps me feel less alone. I hope that by speaking honestly about this struggle, others who feel trapped will know they aren't alone either. We're all trying to navigate a system that feels designed to hold us down, but maybe by holding on to each other, we can find a way forward. This is my truth, the constant pressure, the difficult choices, the postponed dreams, and the flickering hope that one day, this won't be my story anymore. Until then, I breathe, I work, and I keep moving, one tight budget and one hopeful day at a time. I never thought that being 25 would feel like drowning. But here I am, gasping for air in an ocean of bills, rent hikes, and rising prices, while my paycheck barely keeps my head above water. Every day feels like a battle against a tide that's just too strong, expenses climbing faster than I can earn, trapping me in a loop that's hard to break free from. When I graduated college, I imagined my 20s would be a time of growth and possibility. I pictured myself building a career, maybe moving into a cozy apartment, traveling occasionally, and saving a bit for the future. Instead, I'm stuck in a cycle where every choice is about survival. Rent alone eats up nearly 60% of my income, and the rest has to stretch to groceries, utilities, transportation, and the rare moments when I try to enjoy life. The economic environment isn't just a backdrop, it's an active force in my daily decisions. Gas prices soar, so I avoid trips unless absolutely necessary. The cost of fresh produce has skyrocketed, so I fill my cart with processed foods that won't break the bank but leave me feeling tired and unwell. I've become hyper-aware of every dollar spent, checking prices twice, clipping coupons, skipping sales because I can't afford to stock up. The stress of managing such a tight budget feels relentless, like a constant pressure pressing down on me. Emotionally, it's exhausting. I carry this persistent anxiety that sits heavy on my chest. Sometimes it wakes me in the middle of the night, my mind racing through worst-case scenarios. What if my car breaks down? What if I get sick and can't work? Without savings, there's no safety net. The weight of these fears chips away at my confidence and my hope. Socially, financial strain isolates me more than I expected. I've had to say no to invitations to dinners, movies, or weekend trips with friends because I simply can't afford the extra expense. Each no feels like another barrier between me and the people I care about. Sometimes I mask the stress with jokes or laughter, but underneath, there's a quiet loneliness that's hard to shake. Work itself is a struggle. I have a full-time job that pays just above minimum wage and a part-time gig on weekends. The hours are long and the pay is barely keeping pace with inflation. I've thought about going back to school or training for a new career, but tuition and living expenses feel like insurmountable barriers. So I keep pushing forward, day by day, trying to find small wins where I can. There are dreams I've put on hold, buying a home, traveling abroad, even starting a family someday. They feel like luxuries now, distant and almost unattainable. Instead, my focus has narrowed to covering rent on time, making sure there's food on the table, and hoping for no unexpected expenses. To cope, I built small routines that bring me peace. Quiet walks in the early morning before the world wakes up, podcasts that distract me from my worries, cooking simple meals that I can afford but enjoy. I talk openly with a few trusted friends about my struggles, and it helps to share the burden instead of carrying it alone. Despite all this, I hold on to a fragile hope. Maybe someday the economy will shift, or I'll find a better job, or life will hand me a break. I dream of waking up without the crushing weight of financial stress, able to plan and live freely. For now, I remind myself that surviving this daily grind is its own kind of courage. This is my story, a young adult caught in the grip of a system where expenses outpace income, where every day is a balancing act between worry and resilience. It's honest, raw, and real, because this is what life looks like for so many of us. And maybe, by sharing it, I'm not alone, and maybe you're not either. I never thought I'd find myself stuck in this endless loop, waking up each day feeling like I'm running on a treadmill that's speeding up, no matter how hard I push, no matter how far I try to run. It's this quiet, gnawing pressure, a weight I carry beneath my ribs, like an invisible knot tightening just enough to make breathing a little harder. The truth is, money isn't just about numbers for me, it's the boundary between who I am and who I want to be, and right now, it feels like I'm trapped inside a cage I can't unlock. I'm 26, living in a city where rent climbs faster than my paycheck, where groceries cost more each week, and every utility bill feels like a mini crisis waiting to happen. My job pays enough to cover the basics, barely, but I've never managed to put much aside. I always thought that once I landed a steady job, things would get easier. That I'd feel more secure, more hopeful. But the cost of living just seems to grow in front of me, like an ever-expanding shadow swallowing any small gains I make. Take last month, for instance. My rent went up again, by $100. I didn't have that extra 100, so I had to dip into my emergency fund, the one little cushion I kept telling myself I'd never touch unless it was a real emergency. And what counts as a real emergency these days? Every month, my car needs something, a tire, a battery, an oil change, and these things pile up, unplanned expenses crashing down like waves. I remember staring at the numbers in my bank app, heart sinking, as I realized that after paying rent and bills, I had less than $50 left for the rest of the month. $50 for food, transportation, anything else. That's when it hits me, the trap. I'm making money, working hard, but expenses keep outpacing income, and I'm forced to make these impossible choices. Do I buy groceries or pay the phone bill? Should I fix the car now or risk it breaking down and spending even more later? Every decision is a gamble with no safety net. It's exhausting. It's terrifying. And it's not just the money. It's how it makes me feel. There's this persistent anxiety, like a low hum in the back of my mind that I can't mute. I feel guilty when I say no to friends because going out means spending money I don't have. I worry about disappointing my family who helped me out when I was in a pinch. I feel ashamed, too. Like somehow I'm failing, even though I know logically that I'm doing the best I can in a system designed to make survival difficult. Some nights, I lie awake thinking about all the dreams I've had to put on hold. I used to want to travel, to see new places, meet new people, breathe new air. I wanted to move out of this cramped apartment into something bigger, brighter, more like a home. I dreamed of going back to school to study something I love, or maybe starting a little side business, something creative that could bring meaning beyond just a paycheck. But those dreams feel like distant stars, beautiful but unreachable. Every extra dollar is already promised elsewhere, every moment of energy spent on just making it through the day. Coping with all this isn't easy. I try to stay hopeful, but hope feels fragile. I keep a little journal where I write down the small victories, like making it through the week without overdrawing my account, or finding a discounted meal at the grocery store, or even just waking up and showing up at work. I've learned to lean into routines, budgeting obsessively, clipping coupons, cooking at home instead of ordering out. I talk to friends who understand, those who also feel this pressure, and that helps, even if it's just knowing I'm not alone. Sometimes, when the pressure mounts too high, I let myself feel the frustration, the sadness. I cry in the shower or in the quiet of my room because bottling it all up isn't healthy. I remind myself that it's okay to feel overwhelmed, and that this isn't a personal failure. It's a symptom of a bigger system, one that often feels indifferent to people like me trying to scrape by. I wish I could say I have a clear plan to escape this cycle, but right now, the best I can do is keep putting one foot in front of the other. I'm working on building skills, hoping for a promotion, and trying to grow my network. I remind myself that this season is temporary, even if it feels endless. I hold on to the idea that someday, with enough persistence and a little luck, I'll breathe easier. For now, I'm learning to live with the tension between what is and what could be. I'm learning to find moments of peace and joy amid the struggle, even if it's just a good cup of coffee in the morning or a text from a friend. Because despite everything, I still have dreams. And holding on to those dreams, fragile as they are, is what keeps me moving forward. Even if the system feels designed to keep me down, I'm not ready to give up on myself yet. Not now. Not ever. I wake up every morning with a knot in my stomach that never really goes away. It's the same feeling I get when I check my bank app and see the dwindling numbers, like some cruel reminder that no matter how hard I work, I'm never really getting ahead. It's exhausting, this constant tug of war between income and expenses, with expenses always winning. I'm 27 now. When I was younger, I thought adult life would be different. I imagined a future where I'd have a steady job, maybe a little apartment of my own, and enough savings to travel occasionally or splurge on something nice without guilt. But the reality is harsh. Every month feels like I'm walking a tightrope over an abyss, trying not to fall, but knowing full well that one small misstep, a car repair, a medical bill, or even just a missed paycheck, could send me tumbling down. The economic environment around me feels like a storm that never lets up. Rent keeps going up, groceries cost more, utilities are more expensive, and even the little things, coffee, transportation, phone plans, all chip away at what little I earn. My income is stagnant. It's like running on a treadmill set to a speed that keeps increasing, but my legs don't get any stronger. I've taken on side gigs, asked for raises, even looked for better paying jobs, but it's not enough to cover the growing expenses, let alone save for anything meaningful. Some days, I wonder how people manage to buy homes or have kids. It feels impossible. The system is designed to keep people like me in place, to keep us struggling but functioning enough to keep going. I don't mean to sound bitter, but the endless cycle of bills and barely making rent makes me feel like I'm trapped in a machine, a cog turning and turning with no escape. There's no finish line, no clear reward for all the effort. Just survival. This pressure weighs on me mentally and emotionally. It's hard to explain to friends or family who haven't been in this place. They hear I'm broke and think it's just a phase or poor budgeting. But it's more than that. It's the fatigue of constantly having to make impossible choices, pay rent or fix the broken heater, buy groceries or replace my worn-out shoes, save for the future or cover an unexpected car repair. It's a gnawing anxiety that never leaves because you never really know what the next month will bring. I find myself counting every penny, calculating, recalculating, trying to stretch every dollar like it's elastic. Sometimes I skip meals to save money or put off buying necessities. I've turned down social invites because it means spending money I don't have. It hurts, not just financially but emotionally. Isolation creeps in when your budget dictates your social life, and loneliness makes the burden heavier. I'm constantly trying to mask the stress with humor or distractions, but at night, when I'm alone with my thoughts, it all hits me. The fear that I'm falling behind life while everyone else moves forward. I cope by focusing on small things, a walk in the park, watching free movies online, writing in my journal. These moments remind me I'm still human, still dreaming. But the dreams have shifted. Owning a home, traveling the world, or starting a family feels so distant now that they almost seem like fantasies. Instead, I dream about stability, a job that pays enough, a rent I can afford without anxiety, an emergency fund that lets me breathe. It feels like aiming low, but right now, those are my big hopes. What's hardest is feeling like this system, this economy, is indifferent to people like me. It doesn't matter how hard I work or how many extra hours I put in, the rules are set in a way that keeps me on this endless hamster wheel. I want to believe there's a way out, that someday the tide will turn, but sometimes that hope feels fragile, like a candle flickering in the wind. Despite all this, I hold on to my resilience. I remind myself that this is just one chapter of my life, not the whole story. Maybe someday I'll find a breakthrough, a better job, an unexpected opportunity, or just a shift in luck. Until then, I keep going. I keep fighting to find moments of joy and meaning in the struggle. Because even when the system feels like it's crushing me, I'm still here. I'm still trying. That's all I can do. It's late, and I'm sitting on the edge of my worn-out couch, staring at a screen filled with numbers, bills, bank balances, overdue notices, and the knot in my stomach won't go away. I'm 27 years old, working full-time, yet somehow, the math never works out in my favor. The cost of living climbs every month, but my paycheck feels frozen in time, stuck in a place that barely covers the basics. I'm trapped in a system where expenses grow faster than income, and it's suffocating. Each morning begins with a ritual of calculation. Should I fill up my gas tank, or will that force me to skip groceries? Can I pay this month's electric bill, or do I leave it for later, risking the threat of a shutoff? Do I buy fresh vegetables or rely on canned goods again? Every choice feels like a compromise, a trade-off between survival and dignity. These aren't decisions I expected to wrestle with in my late 20s, but here I am, weighed down by the relentless pressure of economic reality. Rent takes the biggest bite out of my paycheck. Sharing a small, cluttered apartment with a roommate helps, but it still feels like I'm just renting my freedom month to month. The walls are thin, the space cramped, and the noise from the street reminds me daily that I'm far from the life I once imagined. The landlords increase rent yearly, sometimes twice, and the idea of buying a place, owning something that's mine, feels like a cruel joke. Food costs keep rising too. I have to be strategic with every meal. I spend hours each weekend meal prepping, clipping coupons, and hunting for sales. Sometimes I find myself cutting back on portions just to stretch what little I have. It's not just about money, it's about control slipping away, one penny at a time. Transportation is another daily stress. My car is old and temperamental, and gas prices fluctuate unpredictably. Some days I take the bus, which means waking up earlier and getting home later, just to save a few dollars. The constant planning, the fear that my car will break down and leave me stranded, adds layers to my anxiety. This financial strain seeps into my emotional life, clouding my mind with worry and self-doubt. I'm exhausted but can't sleep because I'm thinking about what happens if an emergency comes up, a medical bill, a sudden repair, or even something small like a broken phone. The fear of falling behind traps me in a cycle of stress and fatigue. I feel invisible sometimes, like I'm just a number in a system that doesn't care if I succeed or fail. Social life has taken a hit too. I avoid gatherings because they cost money I don't have. When friends talk about vacations, new jobs, or buying homes, I smile, but inside, I feel left behind. It's lonely and isolating to watch others move forward while you're stuck trying to keep your head above water. I've had to postpone dreams I once held dear. I wanted to go back to school, earn a degree that would open doors and give me stability. I dreamed of traveling, experiencing the world beyond this suffocating routine. Owning a home seemed like a distant star, bright but unreachable. Now those hopes feel like luxuries I can't afford, ideas I tuck away for a someday that never comes. Yet, despite it all, I try to hold on to small victories. Every time I pay a bill on time, every dollar I manage to save, feels like a battle won. I lean on a few close friends who understand, who don't judge me for saying no or needing to tighten my belt. Writing this down is my way of reaching out, of admitting that this is hard, and that sometimes, it feels impossible. This is my story, one of many, I know, a story about the grind, the struggle, and the quiet hope that one day, the numbers will finally add up. Until then, I keep going, one careful step at a time. It's hard to explain exactly what it feels like to be 26 and trapped in this endless cycle of financial strain. The constant pressure, the tightening grip of expenses climbing faster than my income, it's like living inside a storm that never clears. I wake up every morning knowing I have bills to pay that I barely can, and it colors every choice I make, every thought that crosses my mind. I graduated from college a few years ago, full of hope and dreams. I thought that having a degree would be a ticket out of the tight spots my family had struggled with for years. But reality hit differently. I have a decent job, but my paycheck is stretched thin almost before I get it. Rent is a monster that devours half of what I earn, and then there's utilities, groceries, phone bills, transportation. Every month, the numbers creep up, the price of gas, the cost of food, the hike in insurance premiums, and my paycheck barely budges. I find myself having to choose, do I fix my car so I can keep commuting to work, or do I pay the electricity bill to keep the heat on during winter? Those decisions aren't abstract or hypothetical, they happen in real time, and they bring a crushing weight to my chest. There's this suffocating feeling of being trapped in a system that's working against me. The more I try to get ahead, the more the gap widens, like quicksand pulling me down instead of pushing me up. Daily life has become a series of calculations and compromises. I plan my meals meticulously, not because I love cooking, but because every dollar matters. Fresh fruits and vegetables are a luxury I rarely afford. Instead, I rely on canned goods, frozen items, and whatever sale I can catch. Social outings? Almost never. When friends invite me out for coffee or a night at the bar, I decline more often than I'd like to admit. It's embarrassing to say I can't afford it so many times, but honesty feels like the only way to keep my head above water, even if it means feeling isolated. Emotionally, it's exhausting. The anxiety is always there, low in my belly during the day, sharp and relentless at night. Sometimes I lie awake, worrying about what happens if I get sick, or if the car breaks down, or if a surprise expense wipes out what little savings I have. There's no safety net, no cushion to fall back on. The fear sometimes feels like a second skin I can't shed. I postpone dreams, ones I once believed were within reach. Buying a home, traveling, even considering grad school, all of these now seem like distant, almost impossible goals. Instead, I dream of stability, just being able to breathe without feeling the weight of debt and bills pressing down on me. Sometimes it feels like giving up on myself, but I remind myself it's temporary, or at least I hope it is. To cope, I've found small pockets of peace where I can. I take long walks in the park, letting the fresh air clear my mind. I lose myself in books borrowed from the library, escaping into other worlds for a little while. I've started talking more openly with close friends about my struggles, and that vulnerability has been a relief, even if it's uncomfortable. Despite all this, I cling to hope. Hope that the economy will shift, that wages will rise, that I'll find opportunities one haven't seen yet. Hope that the dreams I paused won't be lost forever, but just waiting for the right moment. Until then, I keep going, one day at a time, one paycheck at a time, holding on to the fragile belief that things can get better. This is my story, a young adult caught in the grinding machinery of rising costs and stagnant income, navigating daily struggles that are rarely talked about openly. It's honest and vulnerable because this is the reality for so many of us, and maybe sharing it is the first step toward change. And if you're reading this and feeling the same way, know that you're not alone. I wake up every morning feeling like I'm already behind, though the day has barely started. The moment I open my eyes, my mind races through the numbers: rent, utilities, groceries, phone bill, gas, student loan payments. They're all lined up like soldiers ready to take their piece of what little I bring home. It's exhausting, this constant math in my head, calculating what I can afford today, this week, this month, knowing full well that the numbers rarely add up. I'm 27, and I never imagined life would feel like this, caught in a relentless cycle where expenses climb relentlessly while my paycheck inches forward, if at all. The economy feels like a tidal wave that's slowly pulling me under, and no matter how hard I paddle, I can't catch a break. I'm trapped in a system that wasn't built for someone like me, someone who's working full-time, maybe overtime, but still struggling to keep the lights on. Every decision feels loaded with weight. Should I buy groceries this week or try to stretch what's left in the fridge? Can I afford to fill my gas tank and get to work, or do I risk waiting until next payday? When the utility bill hits, I find myself turning off the heater in the winter or skipping showers to save water. It's not about comfort, it's about survival. And yet, no one really sees it. To the outside world, I'm just doing my best, which sounds so much easier than it is. When friends invite me out, I often say no, not because I don't want to be around them, but because I can't afford the dinner, the drinks, the gas to get there. Saying no has become routine, but it chips away at me. The loneliness that comes from constant financial pressure is invisible but heavy. I feel isolated, like I'm living on the edge of a life everyone else seems to glide through effortlessly. The emotional toll is immense. There's this gnawing anxiety that never quite lets up. At night, I lie awake thinking about what would happen if an unexpected expense came up: a car repair, a medical bill, or even just my phone breaking. Those what-ifs aren't just hypothetical, they're threats hanging over me, shadows in every quiet moment. Sometimes, the weight is so heavy it feels like my chest might cave in. I try to cope the best I can. Meditation helps for a few minutes, giving me space away from the storm in my mind. I keep a journal, pouring out frustrations, small victories, and dreams that feel out of reach. I binge-watch shows when I can afford the internet, losing myself for a while. But these are temporary reprieves, and I always come back to the same problem. Dreams, I used to have plenty. I wanted to travel, see new places, feel the freedom that comes with not being tied down by money. I wanted to go back to school, maybe get a master's degree and build a career that didn't feel like it was sucking the life out of me. I wanted to save for a place of my own, maybe start a family someday, or just have the security of knowing I wouldn't have to choose between rent and food. But those dreams have been postponed so many times they feel like distant echoes. Travel is a luxury I can't justify when my bank account barely covers essentials. Education is on hold because I can't afford tuition or the lost income from cutting back hours. Buying a home feels like a fantasy for people who don't live paycheck to paycheck. Even the idea of saving is almost laughable, there's barely enough left over after bills. Sometimes I wonder if I'm failing, if I'm doing something wrong, but then I remind myself it's not personal. It's the system, the economic environment that feels rigged against people like me. Wages haven't kept up with inflation, prices keep climbing, and the safety nets are frayed or non-existent. I'm not alone in this struggle, millions of people feel it, but that doesn't make it easier to bear. What keeps me going is the hope that this isn't my permanent reality. That maybe, someday, things will change, if not the system, then my circumstances. I try to find small victories to hold on to: a paycheck that covers all bills for once, a week without emergencies, a kind word from a friend or coworker. These moments feel like lifelines. I don't want pity, I want understanding. I want people to know that behind the "I'm fine" or "I'm managing" is a constant battle, one that shapes every choice, every relationship, every moment of my day. Financial pressure is a silent thief that steals joy, peace, and sometimes hope. But even trapped, even struggling, I'm still here. I'm still fighting. Because giving up isn't an option, not when dreams have to wait, but not forever. Maybe one day, I'll tell a different story, one where the numbers finally line up, and the pressure lifts. Until then, this is my truth, honest, vulnerable, and real. Sometimes it feels like I'm drowning in a sea where the waves keep rising faster than I can swim. Every morning, I wake up with this weight on my chest, an invisible anchor made of bills, rent notices, and the constant hum of worry about money. I'm 27, and I've been working the same job for the last 3 years, trying to build something stable for myself. But the truth is, stability feels like a joke, a distant dream I keep reaching for but never quite grab. The cost of living is rising everywhere around me. Rent keeps going up, groceries cost more every month, and even the bus fare has somehow doubled since last year. Meanwhile, my paycheck barely budges. My boss says the company is doing its best, that raises are on the horizon, but those horizons feel like mirages, always just out of reach. So I'm stuck juggling my expenses like a clown at a circus, trying to keep the balls in the air, but inevitably, one drops, and it always hits hard. Everyday decisions feel like a high-stakes game now. Should I cook rice and beans for dinner again, or splurge on takeout because the exhaustion from work has me too drained to cook? Do I buy new shoes because mine are worn through, even though that means skipping a social night out? I've become a master of mental math, calculating the smallest trade-offs. Skipping my morning coffee saves $3, but it also steals a little bit of joy from my day. And joy is something I'm desperately trying to hold on to, even as it feels like the economic system is designed to drain it away. There are times I look at my phone and see pictures of friends traveling, buying homes, starting businesses, and I feel this pang of sadness mixed with envy. How did their lives get so far ahead? I've had to postpone so many dreams, going back to school, moving to a city I love, even saving up for a decent emergency fund feels impossible. Instead, I'm just trying to survive month to month, praying something unexpected like a car repair or a medical bill doesn't knock me off balance. The system feels like a trap. It's this cycle where expenses grow faster than income, where you work harder but never quite get ahead. I'm constantly reminded that I'm supposed to be grateful for having a job, but gratitude doesn't pay the rent or fill the fridge. Sometimes, I wonder if the people who designed this system even understand what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck in 2025. Or maybe they do, and they just don't care. Emotionally, it's exhausting. I try to stay positive, but the anxiety seeps in like a slow leak. I have sleepless nights wondering how I'll make rent next month or if I'll have to dip into my credit card again. The credit card feels like both a lifeline and a noose, helpful in emergencies, but terrifying when the balance creeps up. I've caught myself thinking, if only I worked 2 jobs, but the thought of even less free time is suffocating. The constant stress impacts my relationships, too. I avoid inviting friends out because I don't want to explain why I can't afford to join. There's shame in that, a loneliness that's hard to shake. Despite all this, I find small ways to cope. I meditate sometimes, try to journal my feelings even when it's hard. I remind myself that this isn't permanent, that my worth isn't tied to my bank account. I hold on to the hope that one day, the economy might shift, or I might get a break, a new opportunity, a raise, or a chance to rebuild from scratch. My dreams are still alive, just buried under layers of practical survival. I want to travel, learn new skills, maybe start my own business. I imagine a future where I'm not constantly scared about money, where I can breathe and create and take risks without feeling the bottom drop out. Sometimes, I close my eyes and picture that life. It feels like a distant star, but at least it's there, shining, reminding me to keep going. For now, I take it one day at a time. I stretch every dollar, keep my head down, and hope the tide turns. Because being trapped in this system is painful, but giving up on hope would be even worse. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.